Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. There we go. Let's unmute that mic. Yep, and here we go, Caillou. How you doing, sweetie? How you doing? Okay. So, can you hear me out there, Caillou? Hey, Lindsay, how you doing? Eating supper but listening. Okay, great. What I want to say. Thank you guys for being here last night. It was a great show. We're kind of continuing tonight with the Revolutionary War feel, but kind of a little bit of like some fun facts. What was it like to live back then, be a regular, ordinary person, just trying to survive your dailies, Thank you, sweetie. Sounds good. Couple of ghost stories, because what would it be without some ghost stories? And what would it be without my guest here now? When he pops up and gives me the thumbs up, no rush, hon, if you can hear me. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about what it's been like digging into this if you're watching the Liberty documentary with us. And it's just been amazing. And again, I have to put out there that there's so many parallels to like now and what it must have been like to have been the people then, and everything going on in your own neighborhood and what your vantage point was like. I'm sorry, this light is like so much in my eyes right now, and I can't touch it because every time I touch it, it just goes out completely. So anyway, it's been extremely interesting and rediscovering a lot of things, like little things, like when you go to Granary Cemetery in Boston, the big statue there that says Franklin. That's not Ben Franklin. That's his parents. Ben Franklin's in Philadelphia, buried in Philadelphia. Hey, Sir Brian, how you doing, sweetie? Anytime you want to jump in here, just tell me. Send a link if you got a ghost story, you got some factoids on the Revolutionary War. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep trying to turn this light down because it's just light. Man for Man's Earth Band up in here. I'm blinded by the light. It's just been so amazing, and the words of these wonderful, so many of them just ordinary people in their own right, attorneys, maybe shop owners, farmers, planters, maybe landowners, maybe not, maybe just the guy working at the print shop, maybe just the guy trying to sell scrapple in his little cart, going down the street. It affects everybody. And right now, everything is affecting everybody. So I think it's really important to look back at our history, our past, our ancestors, right? And see what they did to get through rough times. How did they go about sneaking around like so many of these people did, that were spies, but never got credit for it. But they were the ones that were carrying out messages that if they got stopped, they were going to hang. And then you're going to see lights going on and off here because I'm having all kind of tech issues, but we'll see what I can do. That's a little better. That's much better. Ooh, hope it stays like that. It's much better. So anyway, the way conflict like this affects the ordinary, regular person and how they hear of the news and what sparks their ideas and their emotions and their passions. And you can look at Civil War like that. The kids sitting around, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years old, sitting around trying, hey, Sasha Bell, how you doing? Hey, Jack. Um, cat hair again. I think it's theirs. But anyway, and you're sitting around the table, and you're afraid to say, um, "Hey, Dad, if they're taking signups, I'm going." Your mom, of course, would want to hold you back. Your dad, not only worried about a son, but who's going to help in the field. I mean, this affected everything. You can't shift something in a tight family situation like that all the gears are grinding to keep that machine going, and take a gear out and have it not affect. Then you have the men leaving, the boys leaving. Hello, Kat, welcome in. Um, they're leaving, and everybody's left behind. So what do you got? You've got the people that couldn't make the march, people that couldn't join, maybe elder people, maybe people who were sick, infirmed, the young, the kids, and a lot of the women. But we've learned over these past couple of shows that didn't stop all women. There were quite a few women, you could say spies, there were some famous ones, but there were many that would pass along information and do, just say they danced with partners they wouldn't have, if they didn't need to get some information from those officers on the other side. There were the ones who disguised themselves as men, just like in the Civil War 100 years later, to fight. We mentioned one the last time Steve and I were together. Oh, there he is. Thumbs up. Are you good, honey? I'll bring you in. Okay. So anyhow, the wild stuff that comes out when you start looking into civilization and how conflict affects people, and what, conflict might make people make a turn they might not have done before, or go for something they never thought that they would. So let's bring this old rattlesnake in here to see what he's got to say about it. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Stockton, one of my favorite authors, storytellers, and my very best friend.
Hey.
Hey,
Thank
sweetie.
you for that marvelous introduction. How you doing?
How you doing, you old
Hey,
rattlesnake?
everybody in the chat. Good to see you.
You been in the tall grass all day, standing in the shade and the cool,
I
as they
stayed in
used
the
to
house
say?
under the air conditioner.
You stayed under the house?
In the house under
In
the
the
air
house, not
conditioner.
under the.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, what was you doing, burying bodies in there? Don't tell. Nobody's listening. You know what that reminds me of? It's funny when you say things, you get flashes, but I just got a flash of that movie Stand By Me, where the kid lost his jar of pennies.
Yeah.
And he had to dig underneath the porch for years, never found them. He couldn't remember what part of the porch he buried him under. That's terrible. So how you doing?
Doing good.
Yeah.
8 weeks from today is baby day.
That's 2 months. That's only 1 week longer than it took to get a letter from the colonies to the king's hands. 6 weeks. So, my goodness. But then if you talk about getting it back, that's another 6 weeks. So,
Yeah.
Yep, baby's going to be faster.
He's on his way.
It's just, and
Long.
when it happens, you just hit the ground running. You better get sleep now. Get you a sleep jar.
Sprung. He just
sleep an extra day.
Spent 9 months on the inside.
You need to get what my nanny called a sleep jar. You have a sleep jar? That's where you sleep an extra hour every night. You get to sleep an extra hour every night, and you keep a sleep jar under your bed. And when you get up in the morning, you take that extra hour and you put it in the jar. So if you have a busy day, you just open up that sleep jar, and there you go. Waste not, want not. You never heard that tale?
I've never heard that, but
well, there you go.
Concept.
Yeah, sleep jar. It's kind of like a curse jar, like you say, your mileage may vary, because if you curse a lot, then you'll have a lot of money saved. If not, then
I have worked places where they had a swear jar, and there was times when I went up and put some money into it and turned loose, because it was just the thing to do.
Let's see who we got here. We got Sasha Bell pushing my merch. Please go in there and get you a Sage Against the Machine t-shirt, or a canvas bag, or a pillow, or I don't know, button. I guess a button. Shoot, do they still do that, people? Buttons on their hats or on their jeans jacket? But welcome in, Sasha Bell. Thank you for the help, sweetheart.
They should.
Lindsay's here, Steve.
Hey, Lindsay.
Hey, Lindsay. How you doing, sweetheart? You just had a birthday. Happy birthday, sweetie. I think we're late by maybe 2 days. I keep forgetting to say it. So there you go. Happy birthday to you. Kat's here, throwing out facts. She's got a bunch of colonial recipes, right, Kat? And I'm putting them all together, and we'll share them probably the next show we do. Let's see, what does the sleep jar help work Cisco? It's only going to work as much as you believe, Kat. Just what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. Is the way I'm going to put it to you, you know. And she had a good birthday, good. So I don't know, Steve. I guess you.
Cathita had a birthday on the 13th, and that was also our 1-year wedding anniversary.
So. Well, happy birthday to you too, sweetheart. Let's see what else we got in here. We got Jack. Hey, Jack. We got Uncommon. Hey, Uncommon. Hey, we got Scott. We got Scott.
Scott's live. How you doing, brother?
We've got, and Sir Bowden. Here he is right here. I never saw these little stars up here on the. What does that mean when you click the little star on the comments, Steve?
They're just, it makes them easier to find. You can star them and then go back to them, and then.
Now they'll go through all the trouble to put a star there so you can go back to them and find them. That makes a lot of sense. I never saw that before, but they can't come up with dark mode. Yeah. Guy who's here.
Yeah, I need dark. See that glare right there? That's all because there's no dark mode. Now I can make it full screen, and it's a little less, but then I can't see the chat.
Right.
And every time I do a stream, and
see, I can do it too. Oh wow, that helps a lot. See, I didn't even know I could do that.
Yeah,
but I can't see the chat unless I look up here, and I can read it that way. But I'll be like this all night. Yeah. So, or I could be like this, which it's going to give me a crick.
It's a crick
in my neck. Yep, I like the chat like that, but it is bright. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So anyhow, Revolutionary War era. I mean, who's your favorite character? You got a couple? I can't pick just one. I do have my top dogs though, and I wondered if you had any, and were they commonly known names, or was it somebody maybe that you pulled out of the shadows and kind of remember?
I can't. I think I do the usual suspects, of course. A lot of them. Hey, you already got your Halloween? We've already started ordering Halloween stuff, so it's Halloween all year round. Anyway,
Halloween. This is Halloween.
Getting ready.
Watch me dumping on my keyboard. See the kitty?
Okay.
See the kitty? No, I don't want to do it. It's one of those hologram things. You turn it and it changes. I don't know if it's showing up on camera. But anyway, I've had that cup for ages. We don't put our Halloween stuff up. I put everything else up, but the Halloween stays out.
Yeah, we left some of it up, but we were already in the process of getting more.
It's just kind of like every day. Halloween every day.
Never too early to start getting prepared for Halloween.
Get your typos here. I got plenty of typos. Lulu Bell. Hello, lovely people. Hello to you, lovely Lulu Bell. All right, so I don't know if like you said, usual suspects. I like different people for different reasons. I can see them for who they are. I can see the John Adams, the pit bull that was, the attorney, the wordsmith, the strength in
the ones that you hear about, the usual suspects. But I'm sure there's some unsung heroes out there.
Oh, it's a ton.
You're probably got a list of those that you.
I'm digging. When I'm finding people. The one for me, and it's killing me because I made a new slide presentation here, but what's happened is it won't load. But I think I've got this. This is one of my favorites right here. This is Christopher. Christopher was 11 years old, often stated that he was 12, sometimes 13, 14, depending on what history book you read. And the closest we can get to it was February 22nd, which is, again, brings up George Washington's birthday was always shifted around because when he was born, and we pretty much picked February 22nd, that's what Washington picked. But it was actually February 11th, and they changed that calendar, Steve, the Gregorian calendar. When they changed it, it moved him over to, and it doesn't seem like that's possible, but 250 years ago, right? And we're celebrating a president's birthday. And in my lifetime, that thing's got shifted every which way but sideways. You remember when we used to get 2 days, one for George and one for Lincoln?
His birthday, you got, and then they had, I think they still had those separately, and then they had President's Day. I don't know.
I can't remember the second
Slept.
president. It's possible they did, Steve. It seems to me I remember them
There was
having a
2
third
days.
day,
I don't
lumping
remember.
everybody together in one,
Yeah, and then
and then they
President.
put them together. I remember when they did that. I was still in school when they put the Lincoln and the Washington, because we were getting ripped off. Everybody was mad about it because we used to get a Monday apiece, you know.
Yeah.
Then they put them all together, you know. So, but anyway, another thing happened on February 22nd in 1770. Now, if you remember me going back and telling you, I'm sorry, guys, telling you that it was very difficult for these people to live together in the same block. Because think about it, there'd be one house would be Tory, one house would be a Patriot, two Tories, a Patriot, two Patriots, a Tory, and they would crawl into each other's house and kill each other and kill each other. You don't hear about that stuff. They were constantly fisticuffs, right? So last night we were talking about how do you quell a crowd to keep from mob rules, you know, and try to get to people's emotion without pushing them over the edge and having them go and start batshit crazy, right? Well, this is one of those times they went batshit crazy. So there was a small group called the Liberty Boys. There were the Sons of Liberty, and there was also the Liberty Boys. And this young man was from a poor German immigrant family. And there's a big backstory on him, but the gist of it basically is he was 11 years old, and he was in a gang of boys that were kind of teasing this one shop owner. Now, this is right after they had just started going through the town and kind of vandalizing a little bit with whitewash, just a real thin paint, very much like you hear in Tom Sawyer days, and putting it on a big T on the window or a big T on the door, and that meant Tory, and that was their way of boycotting. Don't buy from these shops, buy from patriots if you don't want to pay taxes. So again, some of the same struggles, the same similar feelings of today, you know, probably at a bigger scale, but we're not all, you know, going to work and working in the same town and then going to the same taverns and then going to the same, I guess, rock to beat your clothes and going to the same butcher and stuff like that, you know, like they were, and they'd talk and they'd have to intermingle, you know, whereas now it's easier to stay a little separate, right, Steve? You
Yeah.
know? So these boys also wanted to join in and be part of everything that was going on. And this young man, Christopher, very smart for his age. It's said that he was found what they called well, basically it's a pamphlet, or it's a large, almost like we would consider something the size of a poster that would have print. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Broadside. And it would be folded up and you'd have it in your pocket. Well, he had several of these, and they were all like almost like comic book versions of the Patriot heroes. Like some kids would have them of, you know, Billy the Kid, or, you know, Black Bart or whatever. This kid's got Patriot comic book, you know, might have one picture in it or whatever.
Kind of like
but he was literate.
Classics Illustrated. Remember those?
Absolutely. And he could read at 11 and from a poor immigrant family. So this also shows you when these boys got together, they were also learning. They were learning some violent things, but you know, they were also learning too. They were all, you know, trying to read and teach each other how to read and stuff like that. I found it very interesting. But basically he just got into he was in this group, and a shopkeeper who was a Tory, which meant a loyalist to the king, showed up, and they were teasing him, and things got out of hand, and some boys started picking up rocks and what they say all the time, oyster shells. Apparently New England was just lousy with oyster shells all over the streets. Who knows? Rocks and other things. And really teasing this guy. Well, another shop owner comes along, and he's got a little bit more brass in the town, you know, a little louder voice. And he's yelling at the boys, tells them to quit. You know, he's just trying to make a living. And they chase him home. Now he goes home and goes into his house, grabs a gun, goes upstairs, and opens the window and starts yelling down at the crowd. And the boys start throwing rocks up there. Well, a rock goes through the window and actually hits his wife, who was sleeping in the bed till all the ruckus came and the chaos, right? So he's getting panicked. And think about this. It's building, and rocks are coming through glass windows and all this other stuff. And he reaches out the muzzle of, his rifle there, and says, "If you don't quit, I'm going to shoot." And they didn't quit, and he shot, and it was buckshot. Well, no, it was like birdshot, and the little boy got hit. Now this is 11-year-old Christopher Sider. Some people call it Snyder, but in that German time, more than likely it was more like cider pronounced, from what I can pick up. And he is known and in many writings as the first martyr to fall. And this was right before the Boston Massacre. And when he fell, he was dead when he hit the ground. They called for Dr. Warren, who was the doc on the block, and he was a son of liberty, very close friends with Samuel Adams, John Adams, the whole shebang, right? He comes running up. He takes the boy. He does the autopsy. He takes the bird shot out. Samuel Adams is heartbroken. He feels responsible for rabble rousing, and he's really contemplating now this whole, how do you get him to have emotion and to move a people without pushing them into this kind of horror and the bloodshed. He was really trying to wrangle with that, and he did his best, which is why the Boston Tea Party was so peaceful and so important for it to be peaceful. This is where it all stems from. But he was not also going to let this be forgotten. So there was so many people showed up. I don't know if you could see that, Steve. Can you see that well enough to read that second paragraph, or you want me to do it? Either way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I just know you're so good at it. If you can see it, you're great at it.
Yeah, I can see it. Samuel Adams arranged for the funeral, which was attended by more than 2,000 people. Sider was buried in a granary burying ground, and the victims of the Boston Massacre are buried nearby. And then it looks like it repeats after that.
Oh, yeah, very well might. So there you go, guys. There are no pictures. There's illustrations. There's one very bad illustration. I think it's what do you call this, where they carve it all out. It's not a wood carving. It's something else that they,
bas relief.
Yeah, thank you. And, to put in the paper and, do all these broadsides and everything. Well, there was one, it was very ill taken care of, and it's in a museum in Boston somewhere. They don't even have prints of it, out. It's very rare.
An engraving, that's the other thing.
There you go. And, but this young man is buried. Sam made sure that he was taken to the Granary Cemetery there. And he didn't know that not soon after that, you'd have the Boston Massacre, which was 5. That's with your Crispus Attucks. That's his name. So hard to pronounce. That double T in the middle, Attucks. But he died, and then there was 4 others that were wounded and died after the fact. So they were all buried together there in Granary. And I think I have. I think I do. If not, I will have it for you next time. The gravestone it's amazing because it's got Christopher is on there too. And one of the famous Paul Revere prints that he did were all these coffins with the initials of all the people that died in the Boston Massacre, and also Christopher. He was always added to it, and he's right there buried in the same cemetery right next to Paul Revere and Sam Adams and many other famous names from the Revolutionary War. Isn't that something?
Yep.
So the first one to drop, Steve, and that's just awful that it was a young boy. And they were, as I said, the boys of liberty. And you're going to see a little thing I did here where you're going to hear of another group of liberty that was very influential and very did so much to change the outcome of this war. Really, everybody did pitch in, Steve. And I think that's an important, thing to bring up, that everybody in a crisis, it just, you know what I mean?
Yep.
What do you think?
I agree. And then that carries on. You've still got groups like the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Yes, still.
They were into it. They were very vehement about their freedoms. And they
that's not something you messed with up here.
No.
In Jersey. I remember hearing about them growing up, and I'm sure they had the Sons of the American Revolution too, I'm sure. But it to me, growing up, it always felt like it meant almost the same to me as like the Elks Club or this, or something like that. When I heard about it, it wasn't until I got older where I started appreciating what was actually going on. I mean, some of the best museum clips I have, and things like that, stuff I've learned from, all comes from these very dedicated historians that go and really dig into somebody's life, like a Martha Washington, tell you about things that you wouldn't even imagine, that they could find out about somebody like that. It's amazing, keeping history alive. It's really great. Okay, you want to do some fun facts? Here's a little something I did. We can read it. We can take turns reading it if you like. You ready, or do you want to say something up to this point?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. How's Nick? Good?
She's doing good. Resting.
Good.
She's listening in, though.
Is she?
Hi, Nicole. I love you, baby.
I better turn that music down. We love you, honey. Interesting facts about the American Revolution. It's just a few. I was up against the clock today. I couldn't do any extra. This is about as much as I can get done. A lot.
Just 100 or 2.
Man, it's a lot. And this is just, I wanted you to hear the music of the time. This is stuff Washington used to dance to. So when he's, dancing with Martha, this would be it right here. It cuts off real quick because it's annoying as all get out. But he danced all night to it. His dance card was always full. Wasn't it, Steve?
Yeah.
That was something else about George. There you go.
The Liberty Tree in Boston, an elm tree, was a significant symbol of resistance and a gathering place for the Sons of Liberty during the American Revolution.
There you go.
And
it lasted quite into...
woodcut, one or the other.
It lasted a long time, and finally they lost it, and I'll tell you where it is now. This is 150 years later in front of where the tree is. Isn't that something? I mean, stuff like that just gets to me. Okay, let me stop this one for you.
Nancy Morgan Hart, circa 1735 to 1830, was a notable heroine in the Revolution.
She was something. She used to disguise herself and go behind enemy lines to get information.
Known for her exploits against loyalists, Nancy was a skilled herbalist, hunter, and markswoman. She often disguised herself to gather intelligence and was involved in several daring acts of resistance.
She sure was.
That's I love it that you're finding these
Isn't this great?
unsung heroes of the Revolution.
Yep. That's the whole point, man. Ordinary people, man, doing their thing.
One of the most famous stories involves Nancy capturing a group of British soldiers. When they demanded food, she agreed, but secretly armed herself and her daughter. She managed to kill one soldier and hold the others at gunpoint until help arrived.
She was her and her daughter, man. It was something.
Yeah, give us food. Okay, here's some hot lead. Enjoy yourselves.
She's cooking it, and the whole time she's plotting. You know what I mean? There she is. There she is. She wasn't having it. She wasn't having it. That's the spirit right there. The spirit of 76. Spirit of 76.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. Do they still teach that in school? I remember.
I doubt it.
When I was in
We're teaching it here, Steve. We're teaching it here. Put it in your playlist, folks. Put it in your playlist. Show your grandkids. Don't let this go away. Here's a little more of it.
One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arms.
And that's something? Now, y'all know what that's from, right? What poem? What's the name of the poem? Paul Revere's Midnight Ride.
Yeah.
By Henry. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Now, but what about Robert Newman, Steve? Who's Robert Newman?
I don't know.
I wonder who that is.
The guy from Mad Magazine, but who you're going to tell us?
He
was
is.
The sexton of Christ Church, which is now known as the Old North Church in Boston. On the night of April 18, 1775, Newman, along with John Pulling, climbed to the top of the church's bell tower to hang 2 lanterns.
Well, how about that? You don't hear much about him, huh?
And if you look at a picture of that church, that was some climb in the
oh
dark.
My gosh, yeah.
Guessing they climbed
Here's
up
what
there
the
with
lanterns
the
look like.
and then lit them after they got up there. Otherwise, it would have been easy to spot.
There it is right there. That's an Old North Church. That's a steeple. That's what it looks like with the lantern in the window. And they had to creep past sleeping British soldiers. with noisy wooden stairs and big heavy boots. And there it is there with Paul Revere's statue in the shadow there. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. This is from Turn. Turn, we're going to be doing Turn with the spies. It's going to be wonderful. There you go, Steve.
The Daughters of Liberty played a crucial role in the American colonies' resistance against British policies.
Here they come. These girls were not having it. I mean, they did everything they could to help, you know? You'd be surprised. The ladies really pitched in.
They look like a tough bunch there. I wouldn't.
I'm telling you, I would mess with them. Coming at you with a pot of boiling water and a cotton ball, man, I'd be scared to death. So the Daughters of Liberty, this was actually on the cover of their pamphlet. That was their thing, man.
In the 1760s and 1770s, particularly the Stamp Act and later the Townshend Acts.
Right. So this is all stuff that they really got involved in and pushed, because they had to get all the ladies together to say, okay, we won't buy sugar from the Brits, we won't buy sewing thread from the Brits, we won't buy tea from the Brits, we won't pay their Stamp Act. And they fought it, and they're the ones that had to come up with alternative sources for that stuff. That's not an easy thing to do. The
Daughters of Liberty vowed boycotts and non-importation agreements held spinning bees and Liberty teas during the Revolutionary War. They contributed by melting down metal for bullets and sewing uniforms for soldiers.
They got her done. They got her done, Steve. They're melting. Think about that. Like that in the movie Patriot, where they were melting down the boys' metal soldiers to make bullets. And here they are going at it. They got this all kind of, a lot of chutzpah. Just different people. Just some of the faces of the revolution. There's Patrick Henry there. Give me liberty, give me death. You got my Sam. Love Samuel Adams. Yep. And that's is that Patrick Henry? I might have got mixed up. Either way, freedom.
I've heard that he was quite the partier, and what he actually said was, "Give me Libby or give me Beth."
It could be.
Cheap
it could be. Okay, what say?
Patriots. They were serious about how they felt.
Oh, absolutely. But they look. If you think that some of them were getting jiggy with it, I mean, I give you Ben Franklin. Come on now.
Oh yeah.
Half the time they had to pull him out of a tub with two French ladies when they were trying to get him to show up.
Randy old pup. Yeah.
He was something. Let me see if I can hit the right one on this. I hope I do, because if I can, is that it? Wait a minute. Is it this one? Ooh, I think it is. Okay. Because I want to take you now. You want to go on the ship that they threw the tea off of?
Challenging, and the taxes levied by the British could make it even harder. One of the most famous actions in American history is a protest against those taxes. We have the chance to go inside the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum to explore that story and have a little hands-on history of our own with a tea party of our own.
From the National Trust. These guys put on a great thing. It's local museums. It's crazy cool. You're getting to go on the ship.
Hi, I'm Chris.
Hello, I'm Evan O'Brien, creative manager of the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum. Welcome.
This is fabulous.
Thanks so much for having us. Tell me about your museum.
Sure. Well, we're an immersive, interactive experience where we bring the story of the Boston Tea Party to life using a combination of high-tech interactive exhibits, first-person historical interpretation, and, of course, colonial-era artifacts to bring the destruction of the tea to a 21st century audience.
Sounds like a lot of hands-on history for us today.
Absolutely.
Tell us about your friend here.
Sure. Well, this is Samuel Adams, father of the American Revolution and master planner of the event that would become known as the Boston Tea Party.
So can we go get our hands on some tea?
Absolutely. Let's go down to Griffin's Wharf aboard the Brig Beaver, where our historical interpreter is waiting for you.
Excellent.
Where do you meet this lady?
All right,
She's fabulous. Fabulous. Here we go, folks. Y'all ready? Don't get seasick. Look at that. The beaver. Look at that. That's what the tea looked like. Meet Catherine, everybody.
Fill Liz Sweetly, hello.
Excellent, good day, sir. Now, what is your name, sir?
I'm Chris.
Oh, wonderful to meet you, my friend. Now, I'm assuming you're a patriot, so you've already made your way aboard this vessel.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And you do know what would happen simply by stepping aboard the vessel on this night?
No.
Oh, well, my friend, it's an act of treason. Do you know what the punishment for treason is?
Ooh, that sounds like it's a bad thing.
Yes, it is. It's death by hanging. But have no fear. We will make sure we'll keep our actions here a secret. But seeing as you probably have made your way into Boston for the first time, I'll let you take a look around the ship. So we are here aboard the Brig Beaver. She is the last of the 3 vessels to arrive. If you follow me this way, I can take you a little bit up to the quarter deck. Now, typically only the captain and first mate are allowed on the quarter deck, but we're already committing treason. What's breaking a few more rules? So, my friends, welcome to the quarter deck. Now, here in front of us is a tiller. You'll have that aboard this vessel instead of a ship's wheel. And that is because the Beaver is simply, well, a brig. She's a 2-masted vessel. She also has the spanker boom, and this is to help her with her maneuverability rather than her speed. So our owners of the vessel decide to keep that tiller in order to make sure she's able to maneuver around any of these shores or anywhere else that she's making her way through, especially where she's based out of, which is Nantucket. I'm sure you've heard of Nantucket,
yes.
my friend. Excellent, excellent. But I must let you know there are other dangers that are here on this night we must be aware of. Now, out 500 yards away are Her Majesty's warships, the Active, the Captain, and the Kingfisher. And between them, they're carrying over 100 cannons, should they choose to do so. Well, they would fire upon this vessel and sink us, but have no fear. That is only if we were to steal these ships with the tea on board, try to send them back to London without a pass. And sir, do you plan on stealing this vessel?
Oh, no.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So we'll stay here in the safety of Griffin's Wharf then. But there is the army as well. And thankfully, well, they're removed from our town. I assume you've heard of the Boston Massacre.
Yes.
It's a very tragic event that's very fresh in the mind of all Bostonians, including our governor, Thomas Hutchinson. And because of that, he has denied them their request to march back into town to break up our protests. So again, still very much safe on this night.
Not far from the site of the Boston Tea Party is one of the city's most historic buildings. Constructed in 1713, the old State House served as the seat of the colonial government of the Massachusetts Bay
Look
Colony.
at that.
Royal imagery, including a lion and unicorn, adorns
Look
the
at that.
building. And from
That's
the balcony,
crazy.
the royal governor addressed the colonists in the public square below. It was here, on the evening of March 5th, 1770, where an angry mob of colonists gathered. The king's soldiers were taunted and pelted with rocks and snowballs. Suddenly a shot rang out, then a ragged volley. And when the smoke cleared, 5 colonists lay dead, the opening shots of the Revolution, forever known as the Boston Massacre. Today, visitors can explore the historic structure and tour the old State House. Displays take you back to Revolution-era Boston while tracing the evolution of the building. It's a must-stop on any field trip to Boston. Now, back to our normal programming.
Why do I use Navan?
No one asked you.
Doggone it.
It makes managing business travel.
Sorry, commercials, guys. There we go.
The only thing we have to fear, though, is our fellow townsmen and us as well. You see, many of them are lining the wharf watching us, about 1,000,
Look at how
2,000,
far away
even
they
loyalists among them, waiting to see us be hanged for our acts of treason. So I must ask that you keep this a secret on this night. I think it is best that we enter into an oath of secrecy. Do you agree, sir?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I'll ask you to raise your right hand and do repeat after me. I swear
I swear
I was not there.
I was not there.
That's good enough. I believe you, sir. Now, with that, we shall make our way to the bow or the front of the vessel. Follow me this way.
Bet you she gets good tips. Now look at this.
Excellent. Now, do be careful as you make your way down below. And I must say, these stairs would actually not exist during my time. They're simply here so we can easily make our way above and below. So you're very welcome, sir. Excellent. So welcome down below decks. We are now in the cargo hold of the vessel. Now, of course, this is a little bit taller than normal as it's meant for cargo, not for us to walk through. But also this flooring would not actually exist. It would be concave, go all the way down to the keel of the spine of the vessel. And this would be chock full of cargo. Of course, the type of cargo that is on board the vessel depends on where you're coming from or where you are heading to. If you are leaving from Boston, of course, you'll have your raw materials on board. If you're coming back from London, you will have your finished goods on board. And of course, the travel is quite long. You see, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to make your way from Boston to London and 6 to 8 weeks for that return journey as you are going against the trade winds. but unfortunately the crew members have quite a bit they must contend with. Now, if you remember, I mentioned the folklore forecastle here. Well, this is it. Now, it's not quite everything you hoped it would be, but it's enough space. Well, I could say enough space, as much as you possibly can aboard a vessel for all of these men. Now, not all of them will be down below decks for that sleeping shift. About half of the crew will be down below, the rest above decks working, as well. There's always work to always be done. Now, again, this is the ladder that I spoke of to make their way above and below decks. And unfortunately, because they're at the front of the vessel, this is the rockiest and wettest part of the ship. And they must contend with that for weeks at a time, on top of, well, squalid conditions and being next to your neighbors who haven't bathed in quite some time, of course. Now, we're making our way further through. Now, of course, you can see there are a variety of types of cargo. And do remember, we are here for the tea in particular. Now, this tea chest is actually one of our largest tea chests, or the full chest of tea, which can weigh about 400 pounds.
Look at that.
But the weight is
400
made up of
pounds.
the crate itself. The crate is about maybe 10% of the weight. Most of it is coming from the densely packed loose leaf tea here that is in these crates. In order to purposely destroy it, well, you're going to rip open the canvas, hack open the crate, rip through that lead foil lining, and then dig and scrape through the loose leaf tea. Now, some of the men will actually use their hats, they'll use their shoes, anything they can find in order to dump that tea overboard. And they actually take about 3 to 3.5 hours time to get rid of all the tea aboard all three vessels. But thankfully, there's about
a lot of tea, man.
150 men that will come from Old South Meeting House to make their way here in order to destroy this tea. Now, imagine you have about 12 crew members aboard your vessel and about 35 to 50 patriots storm your ship demanding this tea. You're definitely going to stay out of the way, and they will do that, of course. Now, on either side, we have our first mate and our captain sleeping berth. Captain would be on this side. The first mate's on the other side. You can notice from the differences in what you see in there, of course.
Hey, sweetie.
A small space, but do remember it is their own, and
welcome.
Well, they have their own chamber pots as well. But we'll make our way into the aft cabin at the back of the vessel.
Now look at this, and then we'll cut it off. I want you to see the front here.
Of course, you can see here is our Captain Hezekiah coffin, very hard at work. He won't be bothered by us, of course. But our captain is very well known for being part of the whale trade, especially the Roach family that owns this vessel. Now, that does not mean he's part of the whale hunt, or the Big Beaver is part of the whale hunt. She's far too small to take on a task. But he's very well known for sending fresh shipments of whale oil from Nantucket or even Boston, making its way to London. In fact, actually, well, our captain had just dropped off a fresh shipment of whale oil before taking on these detested teas, and he certainly did not know what would lie ahead of him. But we shall leave him alone for the time being, make our way back above decks. Follow me this way.
Bacon for everybody who's new in here. Throw it out there, guys.
Excellent. Let's make our way above, my friend.
Now, Phyllis, you know a lot about the ship, but I understand you also know a lot about poetry.
Oh, yes, I do, sir. Yes, you see, actually,
hear this poem and
involvement with this more so has to do with that poetry writing that you speak of. You see, when I was 18 years of age, Susanna Wheatley will actually encourage me to put the books of poetry together. Unfortunately, we're not able to find a publisher here in town, so instead, they will look across the pond to London in order to find anyone who'd be willing to publish me, and thankfully, we're able to find someone. Now, just a few months ago, I actually returned from my trip from London, finding out that, yes, not only have my books been successfully published, but they're making their way into Boston. But unfortunately, I will find out that my books are actually on the Dartmouth, the first of the 3 vessels to arrive with that detested tea. If you can imagine, I'm fearing that my life's work will be harmed, dumped into the harbor with the rest of the tea. Thankfully, I'm able to reach out to the captain, Captain Hall, and he's able to make sure the books are offloaded before this night occurs. I'm very thankful to him, of course. In due time, I'll be able to sell my books here in Boston and be well known as the poet you know me today.
Congratulations.
Isn't that wonderful? That actually happened to that young lady. So there's that. I wanted you guys to see what it was like inside the ship, or as close as we could get to the Boston Tea Party. And it gives you a little bit of perspective on what it was like. So when we look into Sons of Liberty and that watch party, you're going to see how they really stretched history a lot in that show. But you can imagine how grandiose that must have been to even just see these people jumping on these ships. Like she said, 2.5 to 3 hours to do the task, Steve. So it really kind of brings it home, doesn't it?
Yep, sure does.
There you are. What did you think about the Boston Tea Party? At first it was called the Destruction of the Tea. It wasn't called the Boston Tea Party till probably 100 years later, and that's what we're used to. But what did you know about that from school and everything else?
they taught us that they dressed as Indians and put on the makeup and the headdresses and things like that. And I think they took hatchets to those crates and busted them open and then dumped them in the water. So,
yep, like she said, they had to tear through the, through the canvas. Now, we had somebody in Liberty. She was a historian. I don't know her name. She wasn't one of my favorites, but really one way or the other about her. I don't know anything about her, but she was saying that it was very peaceful and they were just kind of plump, everything going in. Now that's true. You can still have them ripping open the crates and very quietly and peacefully dropping the tea and moving to the next and the next, and people just cheering when they saw stuff go over. There really wasn't any kind of burning of things or destruction of anything but the tea. They even replaced the lock, Steve. They broke a lock and then replaced it, because to Sam at this point, he's trying to really keep the violence down, because there is a problem with these pockets of all these different people going through towns and kind of taking it on their own, or tar and feathering the tax man, or hanging the stamp collector, or whatever it was. And Samuel Adams really had a heart for this, because he was a tax collector. In fact, that's what got him in trouble with the king and the governor of Boston, Massachusetts, because he owed him some money, because he was supposed to collect these taxes from his his friends, and he knew what they were going through. So he would just let them off, and then so the debt became due for Sam Adams. So when you hear that he wasn't good with money, you have to get the full story and understand that most of the time he wasn't good with money was because of things like that. Because the man would come and say, I can't feed my family if I give you this. And he says, well, then keep it and feed your family. That was Sam. I'll take care of it down the line. And his dad, you'll also hear a story about Sam, that his dad loaned him $1,000, which 1760 whatever had to be a ton of money, $1,000. So he hung on to it for a while, and he lived on it for a while, and he did some things with it. But the major thing you're going to hear is a lot of historians say he squandered that. He did not squander it. He lived on it, and he took half of it and gave it to a friend who was trying to save his farm and his family. And of course, the friend never came back, and he never heard from him again. But it's a little bit different to say he took the money and just squandered it. He was a loose cannon, a fool, and he wasn't. He had a big heart and a lot of compassion, and that's what got him into this, and why he pushed so hard for a nation to have control of itself. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. What do we got next? How about a ghost story? You guys ready for a ghost story from New England? Does that sound good? You ready for one, Steve?
Sounds great.
All right. There's so much information here. It's absolutely crazy. How much I'm digging up here. See if I can get rid of that one. Where is it? Here we go. This is good. You guys are going to like this a lot. This is a good old-fashioned way they used to do it.
First settlers came to the new
right about here. All right, that's as loud as I can get it, guys. Let me see if I can turn it up from here. That's as loud as she's going.
New England's first settlers came to the New World not in search of land or material wealth, but religious freedom. The Pilgrims arrived first, and within a decade of their landing at Plymouth in 1620, the Great Puritan Migration began. Between 1629 and 1642,
hi, sweetie Derek.
More than 15,000
love you, bacon,
men,
bacon.
women, and children sailed for the New World. Many of them settled in New England. These people were not only religious, but highly industrious. They built dozens of communities and lived off the land. Their strict code of behavior governed by the church. But along with their wishes for a better life, they brought superstitions from the old world. Among them, a profound fear of witches, warlocks, and things that go bump in the night.
These elements have left behind psychic scars that can be
love Richard Sennett. He's still going strong.
A sense of history is most
Love him.
manifest in the New England area. And this history isn't always a pleasant one. And these tragedies, in fact, are the building blocks of haunted houses and reports of ghosts.
The ghosts of New England's past have been making themselves known for centuries. Anyone fortunate or misfortunate enough to experience these hauntings will not soon forget what they have seen, heard, or felt.
This is not a dead house. This is not an empty house. This is a house that's alive. Here we have resident spirits, and they have a say basically in the house.
I had gone to Jemima's grave, and as I was doing that, an incredible sadness came over me. There was an actual physical heaviness that I felt. It was the weight of sorrow.
And I had the most unbelievable urge to pick my head up and look through the doorway. And I kept fighting with myself for a few moments. Look, don't look, look, you have to look. And I was very, very afraid, but I forced myself to do it. And as I did, something had been there looking at me. And I wanted to flee out the front door, get in my car, and speed out of here.
More than memories haunt these walls in the New England hamlet of Tolland, Connecticut. Those who visit what some call the state's most occupied, unoccupied building have come away reporting sights and sounds that cannot easily be explained.
Look at all the colonial structures and the woodwork and the glass and the
pineal
oh,
gland has tiny little cilia,
we don't need your pineal
hair-like
gland.
extensions all around it.
And if most hauntings are born from untimely death or unrequited love, the spirits inhabiting the Daniel Benton homestead have seen all of these and more, and don't keep their feelings to themselves. Gail White has been the director of the homestead, now run as a museum, for 8 years.
There are times when I do walk in the house and I feel that I'm intruding. That's about the best way to describe it. And I don't have to come very far into the house just to get that sense that this is not a good time to be here.
In fact, visitors often report feeling sadness and oppression rather than fear emanating from these walls. These feelings can be traced to the sorrowful history of 2 young lovers, Elijah Benton and Jemima Barrows. It was 1775, and a young America was fighting for its very life. The call to arms had gone out and was heard in the small farming community of Tolland. 2 lovers, facing a very uncertain future, must say goodbye as Elisha Benton prepares along with his brothers to go off to war. But it seemed things had never been easy for the couple.
Elijah is Daniel Benton's grandson. Daniel was the builder of the house. And the family didn't approve of the match at all, didn't approve of the relationship. More than likely, that's because they were from 2 different stations in life. Jemima is a cabinet maker's daughter. And in the 18th century, you didn't really mix outside your class.
Nevertheless, Elijah, aged 28, had already declared his love for 16-year-old Jemima. Before leaving, he vows a last promise, to return no matter what, and on his return to marry. It is a promise that will echo through time.
This one really
Elijah
gives
went
you
off to a war with his brothers
look.
against the Lexington Alarm in 1775. And they were all 3 of them captured during one of the battles in 76. Put on prison ships in Long Island Sound. Prison ships in the Revolutionary War were comparable to the German concentration camps. They housed hundreds of men in absolutely horrendous conditions. No sanitation. They were overcrowded. Very little food. There was disease rampant everywhere. Men died on a daily basis.
In fact, one day the news arrives to Grandfather Benton. Elijah's brothers have died of smallpox on such a ship. But of Elijah himself, there is no news. Grandfather Benton will die a few months later, without ever learning the fate of his favorite grandson. As the weeks turn to months, there is still no word. Then one cold January day comes news. Elisha is alive, barely 20 miles away, stricken with smallpox on the same prison ship where his brothers had died. It is the best and worst news the family can possibly get.
Here's one son who has survived, but that's followed quickly by absolute panic and terror because smallpox is a deadly disease. It was a very high mortality rate. The disease itself was devastating in terms of how it ravaged your body. When they saw him, when he came through the door and they set eyes on him for the first time, that they were devastated by the advancement of the disease. And to see him in that condition and to look at him and probably know that he was not going to survive would have struck them to their very core.
The news of Elisha's return spreads quickly. Jemima rushes to the home to see him, not knowing what she will find.
The house itself would have been under quarantine, so the parents' first reaction would be just to tell her no, she couldn't come in, she wouldn't be allowed in.
But Jemima will not be denied. What she finds inside is overwhelming. Yet knowing the deadly consequences, she asks to care for him. In doing so, she has freed them from making the deadly choice, while sealing her own. Yet knowing the deadly consequences, she asks to care for him. In doing so, she has freed them from making the deadly choice, while sealing her own fate.
At that time, smallpox was claiming 4 out of 10 victims. But
That's
the
just sad.
chances were close enough to 50-50 that she really was taking a chance with her own life. I think she was unique. She was willing to leave her house, to leave the security of her own parents' home, to come into a situation where perhaps she wasn't really wanted, and to say, I'm going to take care of this young man no matter what, knowing that perhaps she would die from the smallpox.
Sealed off from the rest of the house, with food and water left by the door, Jemima does what little she can do to comfort her only love.
More than likely, her role was to comfort and to try and deal with him in the few lucid moments that he may have had, to let him know that he wasn't alone.
Jemima's parents, wondering why their daughter has not returned home, arrive and are stunned by what they see. Terrified of infection, they say goodbye and promise to return with clothes. But they never do. To them, their daughter is already dead. Then, a few short weeks later, Elisha Benton is gone, having kept his promise to return, no matter what. It is January 21st, 1777. With Elisha gone and knowing the pain that she too will endure, all Jemima can do is wait. Thanking God for Elisha's final release from pain, she begins to pray for her own, and of the time she can rejoin her love.
She probably didn't come down with the disease right away. She was infected with it more than likely in his last days. While Jemima was sick, she would have been put into the kitchen bedroom again for care. Probably not the same kind of care that she gave Elijah.
In the end, Jemima's death was a lonely one. For where Elisha had her, she had no one.
One of the saddest ghost stories I
On
know.
February 28th, less than a month after Elisha Benton died, so too did Jemima Barrows. But not even in death would her dreams be realized.
They buried them against the stone walls.
So sad.
And they're separated by about 40 feet. It would have been proper to bury them side by side. They weren't married. And people say that the spirit of Jemima is still present in this house, on these grounds, searching for Elijah.
I didn't know very much about the house except for some skeletal history, some of the occupants, and I was told of the legends of Jemima Barrows and Elisha Benton, but there were no real details that I was given about events or eerie happenings in the homestead, so I really had nothing to go on.
In 1989, Stephanie Speziale was given an unusual
She has
college
intense
writing
hair.
assignment. Spend the night
It's
in the
intense.
Benton homestead and report what took place.
Is it not?
She asked a friend to join her.
There were a lot of events in the house that took place that had happened repeatedly. All of those events were very unnerving. We heard voices, conversations going on, definitely of men coming from the basement. I did check the basement. There wasn't anything there.
Stephanie
scary
wondered what she
basement.
would find on the second floor.
It's the steps.
I went up the stairs a little bit after the time I actually arrived here. We had not, in the original tour of the house earlier that day, explored upstairs. And went all the way down to the end of the hall where the last room was and opened the door and stepped in. It became very, very cold, and there was a definite pressure change that I could sense all over my body from head to toe. And I started to feel as though I was suffocating. And I had never experienced that kind of a sensation before. So I stepped out of the room and I shut the door and immediately returned downstairs. I felt very unnerved by the experience. It was very unfamiliar to me. And I felt as though there may be something else there except for me.
As the evening progressed, Stephanie encountered even more ghostly occurrences.
Toward about 4 o'clock, I think, or so in the morning, my friend Tanya and I were sitting
Look at that colonial kitchen.
sitting room table. But we started to play games. We were playing hangman on paper napkins and things like that. And I had the most unbelievable urge to pick my head up and look through the doorway to the actual room where Elijah Benton had passed away. And I was very, very afraid, but I forced myself to do it. And as I did, something had been there looking at me. So I bolted from the chair with the flashlight to basically find it. And unfortunately, it disappeared before me, and I never got a chance to really encounter exactly what I was hoping for, I guess.
Sometimes the spirits are less shy. Several years ago, before the homestead was turned into a museum, the owner rented it out to a local couple.
The couple were sleeping in the front bedroom, and the woman woke up to see a man standing at the foot of the bed. And her immediate thought was that it's her husband. And the next thing is that
that's just rude.
A hand over her mouth. And she reached to push it away, and then it just evaporated. And she looked over, and her husband was sound asleep in the bed beside her, so it wasn't him. And that was a very unnerving experience. To the best of my knowledge, these are fairly reliable people. And it's generally accepted that they experienced something unusual.
It's so pretty. Isn't it pretty?
The people living here were very connected to each other and very connected to this place. Whatever entities they are now, their love and their attachment to these things and places and to each other is beyond boundaries.
Well, to anyone coming in and totally denying the existence of spirits, that's their own opinion. What we do is tell a story. This is house.
I love those fences.
It's still a living, breathing house, and I think it breathes
so
and
pretty
lives through the spirit of
the rock wall,
Jemima,
Steve.
Elijah.
They're gorgeous.
And people down through the centuries who have lived also with great sacrifice and love in their lives. I think it still carries through today. You can feel it. There's sadness at times. You can feel there's strength as well.
2 hours north of the Benton homestead, another haunting can be traced to one of the most disturbing chapters in New England's long history, the Salem witch trials.
Oops. I was trying to cut it off. There you go. If that ghost story didn't have everything Revolutionary War, I didn't do the Salem witch trials because that's another night. And those are, that again is Hauntings in America, the New England episode. But that had everything, Steve. The young couple, one of them was 16, one's 28, you know. But back then, this is what he's going off to war and she's staying back, left behind. You know, pretty much gives you both vantage points of the Revolutionary War and what it's like, you know. It didn't change much. Do you look at it, Steve? Have you ever thought about it? How very similar the Revolutionary War and Civil War, right?
Yeah.
And how much they still stayed the same, 100 years difference, right? Not just the fighting style, a lot of the weaponry, the bayonets, the type of weapons that they had. I was talking about that last night, and if you think about it, 100 years, it's hard to wrap your mind around. You think things would, you think things would change, but here's a young couple telling a story, and you could easily without much change at all, just put Civil War on top of it.
The same thing, yeah.
You know, the young guy leaving the town. He's going with his brothers. He's going off to fight on his soil, on, you know, his nation's soil, and probably fighting cousins, family members, people he went to school with, you know, if he went to college or school or whatever, you know. And it's neighbors fighting neighbors, family, you know, brother against brother. Same across the board. Like I said, even the fighting styles, because people bring up the whole method of fighting where, you know, everybody line up and you volley, you shoot, kneel, volley, shoot, kneel, behind you, shoot, kneel. By then the front one should be up and you move forward. You know, this kind of fighting, you know, across an open field usually, you know. So much so that when the British got here and they got into Lexington, was really the first, if you're counting on within the war, not just a skirmish, but something that was planned. Go get that ammo, you know. We can't have them stockpiling, kind of their own little Waco, you know. They've got too much. We got to go take it. So they sent a small squadron of British, and they're all just da 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 da. You know, we've been going to school for this. We've been marching since, you know, forever. We have fancy uniforms, you know, and generals with big hats. We're all good, you know. And they get there to a bunch of ragtag militia who are actually fighting. And I brought this up last night, for their own soil. You see where I'm coming from? For their own farms, for their own families, their own life, their own, you know, this was their soil, and to them, they're coming on it. And it's not very far removed from when their bloodlines and their ancestors did it to the natives that were here. It's just this overlapping. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I
The more
mean?
things change, the more they stay the same.
Exactly. And I just thought, you know, with those two, you know, young people talking like that, it really can take it and just put him in a Civil War uniform and add that. And to me, that 100-year gap, you would almost imagine there'd be much more of a difference. But I guess the fact that it's, you know, on that same soil, you know, and they really were. A lot of people don't talk about it, but there was a lot of infighting in these towns. There was a lot of, it wasn't just fist fights in taverns, you know, or at the local meat guy, you know, or the blacksmith, you know, around the fire, you know, in fisticuffs. It wasn't just that. It was people creeping into homes like Nancy, bless her heart. I think it was Hart, wasn't it? H-A-R-T. And soldiers coming in there and saying, feed us, and demanding it. And you had to do it. That's what quartering is all about. When the king sent the soldiers over, look, I got to send them over there because you guys are coloring outside the lines. So you're going to feed them, and you're going to house them, and you're going to take care of it because it's your fault. I have to send them there. That's the king's kind of, that's a shorthand on how the king thought of it. Because from their vantage point, Steve, it's really simple to look at. They felt like they helped us with the French and Indian War. The French were getting a little, you know, tight in the britches there, and got with the Native Americans, and were trying to push everybody this way, you know, from Canada and across the, you know, there was a lot of land shifting going on. And the British jumped in, and that was what, 7 years, I think, wasn't it? 7 years war?
I think so.
I'm just spitballing. And so the king's over there, and he's got, you know, his knickers in a wad because what do you mean they're upset about attacks? You know, it's, hey, we just went over there and helped you push the French and the Indians back. If you remember correctly, 2 years ago, it cost me a lot of good soldiers, a couple of my ships, you know, and he's going off that way and says, you know, if you want us to protect you, you got to pay a little money. And they just didn't get it, that it wasn't the money. You pop over to the vantage point of the colonists, they're going, wait a minute, we've been governing ourselves for a very long time. We've had our own taxes. We've had our own commerce. We've had our own structure, our own, you know, police, our own fire, whatever, you know, and they've been doing it on their own. And then all of a sudden, here comes this king. It didn't matter that it was 3 cents, 2 cents, whatever. And he started out, and this is what really did it, Steve, I believe. You have that differential in here's an American spirit. Hey, we're on our own. The teenagers that got, they got their driver's license and they've got their, they've spent Saturday night out on the street, Steve. You can't get them back on the farm. You know what I'm saying? And Britain's trying to go back on the farm, pay attention, stay in line. When they're going, no, we've seen Saturday night. We're going to keep it. You know what I'm saying? This is a different kind of history, folks. So, the thing is you can see Britain's side of it, but they didn't get the idea. They didn't get the free-spirited. It's like, you owe us money, and if you want us to protect you, you're going to have to pay for it, and we say you're going to do it this way. And then you have that communication of the 6 weeks across, 6 weeks back. So meanwhile, 6 weeks is a long time in Boston, Massachusetts, where everybody's mad, and places like Philadelphia and New York and and people and things are spilling over and getting out of hand, and 11-year-old boys are getting shot, for throwing oyster shells. And the next thing you know, a group goes up and just as simple as you please sees one British soldier leaning in a doorway of a shop. I believe it was raining or cold or snowy or some kind of nasty Boston weather. And it wasn't pleasant, let's put it that way. And they're walking along and see this soldier. They start ribbing, they're razzing them. Yeah, you red coat, you lobster back, you this, yada, 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 yada. And the next thing you know, there's stuff coming back, but rightfully so, his knees are shaking a little, Steve, because this is a mob. This is like a group of 5 people or whatever. And it's a little intimidating, and he starts up and they're yelling louder. And before you know it, another larger group around the corner hears it. And they happen to be British soldiers too. They come to his aid. And now the yelling really gets loud. And the oyster shells are really starting to fly with the snowballs. And before you know it, a rifle goes off. And that's your Boston Massacre. And that is when Crispus Attucks, I said it, he drops, he falls. He's the one with they say the little dog in the picture, Steve, is I wonder if I got that picture. Y'all know you've seen it throughout anybody's ever been to school or opened a history book. But there's a little dog in the picture, the Boston Massacre. And they say that was Crispus, his dog. Is that it? That's not it. That's probably, I don't have it. I hate that other slideshow didn't load, but either way, the picture I'm talking about. Now, Paul Revere, again, there was 5 people there that died. So they buried him, like I started this whole podcast with, Sider, little Christopher Sider. And they are all buried in the Granary Cemetery. And within there is Ben Franklin's parents, Paul Revere, Samuel Adams, and quite a few others. So if you ever get to Boston, make sure you get there, because it's said to be very haunted, of course, but probably not by the ones you'd want to bump into, though. So just because famous people are buried there doesn't mean that's who you're going to talk to. So what do you got going over in your neck of the woods? You got any more Revolutionary War ghost stories, or do you got places that are haunted around you?
There's quite a few haunted places around here. There's a couple of strange cemeteries that I'm going to go check out. One of them's called Spider Gates Cemetery. It's Spider Gates Cemetery. The gates look like spider webs. It's
that sounds
all
cool.
kinds. Supposedly a
like
portal to
Stephen
hell.
King's got that.
All kinds of stuff down there. But I don't really know the full story of it. I've got to do some more research and things on it. But there's so much history just in this general area, and all kinds of haunted places. And said the 13th was our wedding anniversary. We spent part of our honeymoon in a haunted carriage house, and that was strange.
I bet you. Now, where was that?
That was in a little town called, I think that it might have been in Leicester. It might have been in Worcester.
Now, tell listeners who don't know what a carriage house
there was
is.
a big house there. It was the second oldest house in whatever town it was. And kind of attached on the back of it was a carriage house. And this was a big, big house. And back in the day, that's where people, it was like their garage. They parked the carriage in the carriage house if they had money.
Yep.
And this one had been turned into B&B. Well, there was a strange feeling in there. And then I'd taken Mulder's leash and put it on a dresser and went out into the living room, came right back, and it's laying on the bed. Nicole was in the bathroom. So there was some stuff moving around in there, but it was, we cohabitated with the ghosts, no problem. But there was a lot of age and history there. You could feel it. Hey, Vixen.
Oh gosh. Hey Vixen, how you doing, sweetie? You sure can, and that's one of the reasons, again, I'm doing this, because to reach back and to see what motivated these people, what moved them, of course, out of necessity becomes invention, and but how would you describe it when it pushes on a person so much that it causes them to do something they never thought they could do, or to reach out in a direction they never, you know what I mean? Like the women here, the Daughters of Liberty. Okay. So they all got together and say, look, gals, there's not going to be any more sugar. You have to understand what this boycott means. It's so easy to say the word boycott, but they're talking about no supplies from Britain, no imports from Britain. Okay. Now, I can't tell you whether they got stuff from France or Spain. I would imagine they did, but I can also imagine a war with the British Navy would have halted that as well. So I can imagine, even if they did, that the flow was kind of staggered. So, the recipes that I was throwing out last night from the colonial times, and the ones that said they had sugar in it or molasses or whatever, they had to find alternatives. They had to find alternatives to the fabrics and stuff that they were buying from Britain, you name it. So now they have to do what that one lady was talking about in episode 1 of in the Liberty series. She was talking about, I'm learning how to knit, and she's also there up in the production of that good New England wool, because by the time the first year of the Revolutionary War went by, they were all homespun was the fabric to be wearing, if it was made in America, to the point of it was such a profound point to make if you were wearing all American made stuff that, gosh, sound familiar? That when Martha Washington came to see George at the end of the war, because again, they'd been separated for 8 years, they'd seen each other. She'd usually come where he was. There was lots of camp followers, and we'll get into all that stuff down the line too, because it was a very intricate part of this whole thing was the camp followers, and they all just weren't, hoochie mamas either. George Washington really frowned on that, and I can't say it didn't go on, but it wasn't as prevalent as 100 years later with the Civil War. To camp followers, it kind of meant a whole new thing there, because it wasn't a lot of wives and girlfriends and kids like it was in the Revolutionary War. They actually had kids with them, because George Washington realized after a very short amount of time that he was having people desert, because the wives are sending letters and word back that we're getting overrun. People are taking all our supplies. We can't eat. We can't whatever. They're deserting to go back and take care of their families. If the families are with them as camp followers, he can feed them whatever. They can help. They can do laundry. They can sew. They can first aid. They can be confidants. They can all this stuff, and all the regular stuff too. But your family is there. He felt like with what he had to work with, it would make better soldiers at the time, but he wasn't happy about it. If you read his letters, it was something that it was a burden. But you also heard last night, if you were here, that George Washington is he's actually doing all these duties that you wouldn't even imagine, like making sure the fresh hay was available, making sure that all the pea pots were emptied, and all this other stuff, where you would imagine you had some custodial sergeant doing these things. So you have to take all that into consideration as you go. So textiles were huge. These ladies are learning how to do all kinds of things. And one of the number one things they were doing is learning how to dye stuff. Did you have anything on that, Steve? I know I rattled on there, but I think I came full circle.
No,
didn't I?
You got it.
All right. Did I come back around? All right. Let's see. Putting color to cloth. I thought this was so interesting, because I'm working you guys up to something, because when I finish this, I'm going to tell you the story of the American flag and how they chose the fabric, why they chose the colors, how they got the colors, how they did it, and why they don't run. So when you hear the phrase, these colors don't run, it actually stems from how they did the original flag colors and some things that were said and done around that whole time. And it really is profound. But till then, let's check this out. These gals are something. You're going to like these gals. Okay, wait a minute. They're bouncy. Now, they are from, and I want to highly, highly recommend this channel. This channel comes out of, there's two of them. One comes out of Colonial Williamsburg. This one comes out of, well, they'll tell you. But it's fabulous. If you like this kind of stuff, you should go subscribe. Here they are.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are here at the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown on our Revolution War era farm. I am Gretchen. This is Sarah. And today we're going to talk just a little bit about dyeing or putting color on textiles in a farm setting in the 18th century. So come on, let's get started.
They do a great job. They really do.
So although every color is available to dye in the 18th century, today we chose to do madder, or actually we're doing madder root. So we're taking the root of a plant called madder, and yesterday we simmered it down. So we put it in water and we put it on heat. And if you notice the difference in the ones that have been sitting in water and simmering, they're a lot softer and the color has been kind of released from it. So what's neat about the madder plant, or one of the neat things about the madder plant, is that it's been used since ancient times. Yep. So it comes from the Eastern Mediterranean area or Persia, but it's invasive and grows well in other areas, including Tidewater, Virginia. So by the time of the American Revolution, they would have or could have been growing this in their gardens, especially during wartime. So one of the most expensive things about your clothing in the 18th century is the fabric itself. So a great or cheap or inexpensive way to refresh your outfit is to have it dyed or over dyed. And dyeing is definitely a profession. So it's possible that you would study 7 years to be a professional dyer, but it's also something that people could do at home, just kind of like today. So they might call it plantation or home dyeing at the time. And madder is one of the few dyes that both professionals and people at home are using at the time. And it's also something that is not as expensive as something like cochineal or Brazil wood. And it's pretty long lasting too. So it's very color permanent. And you see a lot of uniforms and flags that have a madder base for their red. So if you come to the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown and you see the soldiers in the Continental Army encampment, they're wearing an indigo blue coat. And it's made of wool, and the facings are red, and they are usually dyed with madder. So if you are an officer, yours might be dyed with cochineal or have a cochineal base, but for those enlisted men, madder is the base for that red. And the same for the British soldiers. So a lot of those enlisted men are wearing a madder-based wool coat.
So today we have two different types of fibers that we're going to be dyeing. One of them is a protein fiber. The skein of yarn that I have in my hands is wool. And so wool is a protein fiber. It comes from animals, things like silk. Silk comes from silkworms. That's also a protein fiber. And then in addition to that, we have cellulose fibers. So my kerchief today is made out of cotton. That's a cellulose fiber. We're going to be dyeing a couple of kerchiefs. So the reason why that matters when you are dyeing things is because generally protein fibers take and hold dye a little bit better than cellulose fibers. So you would put that into account when you want to figure on what you're going to want as your finished product, your finished color, because you're going to get brighter, more vibrant colors with protein fibers and slightly more muted tones with cellulose fibers.
So for all the fibers that we dyed with today, we pre-treated them with a mordant. And a mordant can be different salt metals. Sometimes it's something toxic like arsenic and sugar of lead, and sometimes it's a little less scary like tannic acid that's found naturally in things like acorns and walnuts, or alum, which you might be familiar with today if you've ever done any pickling. You can find alum in the spice aisle. So today we used alum because it doesn't give it any kind of tint ahead of time. You can dye it really whatever color you want and you don't have to worry about that. So we soaked the yarn and the cotton scarves in alum and heated that up for a little bit, and then the dye will attach to it way better. So it's not going to necessarily change the color. It could help a little bit, it might brighten it or something depending on what you're using. But more than that, the dye is just sticking to that fiber a lot better when you pre-treat it in the mordant.
One of the things you may have noticed if you have a woolen sweater or woolen garment in your closet is that the care tag says dry clean only. And a lot of people are under the impression that you can never get wool wet. That will ruin it. And so you might be wondering to yourself, how is it that we're able to get these things wet to prepare them for dye and get them wet in the dye pot and then wash them at the end of the day? And the answer to that is, as long as you don't have a severe change in temperature and shock the fiber, then usually it's okay. So for example, what that means is something like these woolen stockings, if I go from cold water to cold water or hot water to hot water, then it's usually fine. You're not shocking it from severely warm water to severely cold water. And that's what makes wool felt or shrink, is that severe change in temperature. So that is how we're going to be able to not only dye these, but we're going to be able to wash them at the end of the day. So speaking of washing the items that we've just dyed, we want to overshoot perhaps by 1 or 2 shades if we're really in love with the color. Because when we wash them, a little bit of this pigment that we've just put on there is going to wash away. And so to get the color that you want at the end of the day, you might have to kind of just overshoot the mark just by a little bit. Thanks for joining us today and learning about madder as a dye plant in the 18th century. If you like some of the items that you saw us dyeing today, the skeins of yarn will be for sale in the gift shop here at the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown. If you enjoyed our video, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, we would love to see you out here in person here at the American Revolution Museum at Yorktown at our Revolution Era Farm. Thanks for watching.
So cool. Ladies did a good job. So I wanted you to see that because later on, like I said, in the documentary, we're going to talk a little bit about that dye and what it meant and, you know, why they chose colors and how important it was, you know, how much was Betsy Ross involved. How much was the young sailor who was told by his captain, you have to come up with a flag because the British have to know who we are and the pirates have to know who we are and Spain has to know who we are. So out of these times, out of this necessity, all of these inventions, right? People reinventing themselves, people inventing new equipment to use to make up for the loss of hands in the field, or you know, different weapons for war, and all of these things. And I think it's so interesting, people reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to do things, especially like a lot of these women who just decided, you know what, I'm leaving my house and all my belongings and everything else, and I'm going to follow this soldier on his march. I'm going to camp with them. I'm all in. And these are camps that, you know, you're talking, it's raining all the time. You're sleeping in mud. I asked the chat last night, how many soldiers do you think were assigned to one tent? These tents that were very similar to the ones, again, used in the Civil War, not far removed from the ones I trained with in basic training in AIT. These canvas, you know, half tents, like in my case, each person carried a half, and you get with one other person, you put 2 together, 2-man tent, you know. Civil War, I'm not 100% sure there. Pretty sure it was canvas or hemp, one of the two, probably a mixture. And I believe it was something like 6 maybe to a tent, you know, if you're lucky 4. But here in the Revolutionary War, in these small tents, they would assign as many as 10 or 12 to one tent. And like the lady said in the other video, people weren't taking baths. They weren't smelling too good. You had to pick, you know, bad breath or feet, you know. This was not an easy life. There was fleas, there was lice, there was disease, there was hunger, there was cold, it was wet, it was this whole, just imagine, if you will. And they're also trailing behind them are these camp followers and these, you know, women, these wives, these girlfriends, these sisters, people that had no choice to know where else to go, people that have had their villages or their towns or their homes burn out and couldn't make it on their own. So what other choice did they have? So when you hear stories of Valley Forge and George Washington's army was starving, there's women and children there too. And they did an awful lot in camp, all the regular things you would think, like I said. But one of the ladies' stories, Steve, You'll get a kick out of this, because if you think about it, just like we've said, I don't know how many different episodes we've had on Civil War and talking about the same thing.
Numerous,
It's the same.
innumerable.
It's the same. And it's always the heart of the kid that's writing the journal, writing a letter home, talking about sharing an apple,
Yeah.
you know, and how it's amazing, you know, what a treat. Or got some good Virginia tobacco, you know, or coffee with somebody, you know, or conversation. But anyway, it's the same with these guys. And they're really kids, you know, boys. And one of these journals, the kid hadn't washed his uniform 80 days. 80 days he was in the same uniform. They had lice, and to kill time, because there was a lot of boredom too, because keep in mind, they didn't even fight in the winter. During the Revolutionary War, now this was something I do believe that, you know, changed in the Civil War, because, you know, they'd go at it in the snow. But in the Revolutionary War, they did not fight. They stopped fighting until the thaw. And you'd think, well, you know, why? The terrain, this. Think about it. You're feeding an army. How much cattle do you have? How many horses? There's no grass. There's no way to feed these animals along the way when you're moving an army. You know, it's difficult. And when you start thinking about the basics like that, you go, oh, okay. So these kids are sitting around. They're covered in lice, hadn't taken showers, probably starving to death. We told the story about the kid eating the oxtail he found alongside of the road, or some mess he was talking about. Then he ate it, and then he was surprised he got sick, you know. And he wrote about that. But it was beautiful the way he wrote it. Their language was amazing. You know, it sounded like poetry. And the kid's talking about throwing back up a damn oxtail he found on the side of the road, Steve. But you know,
I still question that oxtail. He probably stole it off the ox somewhere, is what I'm thinking. You know? Ox just don't lose their tails. You know?
It just drops off.
Or maybe, I mean, I know they cook with them and make soup and stuff out of them. I've had oxtail soup before.
You know, you wonder.
This is no good. I'm just going to throw it out of the wagon, and then the kid's like, "Ooh, oxtail!" You know,
Yeah, I would have to say that it would all depend on what your definition of the word "found" is. You know,
yeah,
it's like, what do you mean you found it? You know, did you like somebody turned their back and you just stole it out of a pot, or you know, it's hard to know because we're just reading what he wrote, you know, and reading into it. But the way he described it, you know, he felt it was like a friend that he had found. It's so poetic. But and you wonder, not the chance of these people going past what we would consider fifth grade, third grade, if you're lucky, because especially if you're a farmer, Steve.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was when I was a kid living in that brief time in Deep Creek, Virginia. I can recall being in class and it being a big thing about how the year was broke up due to the harvest. You know, it was a farming community, and people not coming in and being gone for a while, and they had some other kind of special makeup thing they did, because I'm looking around like, where's half the kids? I think there was some kind of an abduction or something. I'm freaking out because half the class is gone.
Baling hay or gathering corn or detasseling corn or something. There's always something to do down on the farm.
Yeah. And it seemed like that was harvest time. So all these, half the class just went missing, you know, and then I found out, you know, over time that's what had happened. And then they come back and they do something else to make up for it. But it was even, I could remember you could even get your license at 13, and it was something special called a farmer's driver's license or something, any vehicle on wheels, and you could get your license that early. That's how country this school, you know, this county was that I was living in. So, and that wasn't very long ago. That was 70s. I don't know what it's like now, but you know, it was Virginia. It was very rural Virginia. But God, man, the beautiful country. God, is beautiful out there. Much like Tennessee and Pennsylvania, a lot of different places that are just absolutely, that still have that look of untouched. You know what I mean? So I don't know where the hell I was going with all that. It's just so much interesting stuff, though. You know, it's so easy to criticize in these short little bursts of history we get nowadays. And to watch a movie that somebody just took a name and an event and just went wild with it, you know, and decided, well, let's just, you know, see what we can do with it and just flip it all over. And then little kids come up and see that and think that's how it was. And, you know, like John Adams said, facts are funny things, you know, they're facts, and they're going to be like, you know, And I think it's really interesting the stuff they had to go through to get stuff done. And the ghost story with the two people I thought was so profound, because not only that you can overlap it with the Civil War, that's one thing to look at, but follow the guy. This isn't made up. This is history. It's written in the journals. It's a well-known story in the town because of how this girl was treated. Basically, she goes in there, sacrifices her life basically to take care of this guy, and he's fresh off the warships, which is a terrible story in and of itself, isn't it, Steve? The way they held prisoners I don't know how much you know about that. I'm limited, but I can imagine looking at that ship we saw with the tea getting tossed off. These guys are all shoved down there where the tea would have been, in those little holes. This was the most horrible conditions that they held prison ships, basically. And they were horrid conditions. And there's a story, I want to say it's probably the conspirators talking about the Lincoln conspiracy with, when the Surratts and everybody and Lewis and all them were arrested. There was a scene in there that was spot on about how those ships must have been, and the women were trying to go in there to help family and other people along the way. It was just as bad as Helmira or Andersonville or, any place like that in the Civil War. Yet again, same. And they still used them in the Civil War as prison ships, especially in the East Coast and New York and around there too. It's terrible stuff. So listen, I got one more little ghost story here. This guy had a bad experience, and the way he told it was just so serious. And I thought it was neat. Well, not that he had the experience and he's scared. That's not what I mean. What I mean is it's neat to listen to this guy tell his little story, because he's so changed by it, if that makes sense. It's a revolutionary. He's in this, I can't remember the thing, and they don't name the town. That's how serious they are. They won't name names, but this happened, But again, I have no doubt believing that it happened. It's just the approach they're taking to it. Obviously, these people aren't one of us where they just come out and go, I saw an orb last night. Did you? I had fairies in my garden. Really? Did you get pictures? I mean, we're a different breed, right, Steve? It's just we take it for granted, and I'm like that. I'll go into a bar and go, oh, that your mama's fine. She's standing right behind you. You're good. Have another beer. She said, don't go crazy, though. Remember that one time, and we live in that world, right? And these people are just, the way they set up, and he's talking about it, it's almost like with the seriousness of a police officer that cannot let out any information because he might lose his job or his pension. And it's refreshing to watch people like that tell a ghost story, because not only are they're not seeking fame in it, they're not seeking anything. They just feel the need to say it because it happened to them. It profoundly changed them from the inside out to their very core. They'll never be the same. And they just need to tell somebody. And that's a refreshing kind of ghost story to hear. So I thought I would say that. It's pretty neat, because I'm just not, we're not used to that, because we just lay it on the line, don't we, Steve? And everybody in the chat, we just tell it. All right, let me see if I can't mess this up. Did you have anything you want to say, sweetie? This one's about 9 minutes if you need to go roll Mulder a cigarette or something.
Step away for a minute, yeah.
Okay. One more and we'll be out of here. Let's see if I can get it right. I've been doing good on the buttons, Mr. Stockton.
Yeah, you haven't ran it out of the road yet tonight, I don't think.
Well, it's on. Hang on. It's that last curve.
Buckle your seatbelts. Yeah, there's a downhill and a sharp turn at the bottom.
This might be it. No, that's not it. Maybe this one. Well, we'll push this button, see what happens. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yep, that's it. Maybe. God bless him. All right, this is from the city of Greensboro, North Carolina, and he's in a historic, undisclosed historical place. Here we go.
Your story. I know this is a difficult thing for you to talk about.
It's hard, Steve.
Well, so I'll tell the story. I've not told it many times. I know that I need to protect names here, but this is hard. This is a real story. This really happened to me when I was out in the field. So Back in the day, I worked out in the park system, as you guys know, and I worked in facilities, and we would do maintenance at our buildings and then on the exterior buildings. But we did a lot of setup for events, for special events and different things that would occur at this facility. And it is here in Greensboro, I'll say that. And we would come in incredibly early to do that. This morning, I'll never forget it. I drove in. It's probably about 5 o'clock in the morning. We would get started setting up really, really early. This facility, just great facility, had great opportunity to see different things. I remember seeing deer on my way in. It was kind of foggy that day. It was a little bit foggy, and it was kind of dark still because it was 5 in the morning. And pulled into my space, went into a building, and my job was to set up. So I met my partner there, and he and I started setting up tables and chairs for an event. And while we were doing that, we were talking, and out of my ear, I could hear somebody running down the hallway. And I was like, that's weird. First of all, who the heck is here with us at 5 something? Because we locked the doors behind us. And why? And we looked at each other, and I was like, all right, well, I'll go check it out. So I walked down the hall a little bit, and I looked, and there was really only a couple of rooms that somebody could have gone to, and I didn't see anything. I said, well, that's weird. And we kind of sloughed it off, because you hear noises and you think, well, maybe it's the wind or something. So I walked back over, we started working again, heard it again. Except this time it was much heavier. It was running. And I turned around and I looked, and we had doors that were very, very heavy, and under the doors were flat. So they weren't the kind of doors that could swing open because of air. And it just started opening. And I was like, oh, well, definitely somebody's in here. So I ran down and I was like, hey, whoever's in here, I'm sorry you can't be in here right now. We're setting up for an event. You're going to need to come out. I looked around, nothing at all. Well, at this point, we're looking at each other, and it's pretty apparent that something is going on. So we start to walk back up the hallway, and all of a sudden, something just blew by me. And I don't mean wind. I mean heavy steps. Something just went by me. And I heard jingling, like keys. We used to clip our keys on our belt, and that's what it sounded like. So at this point, we got it in our head that the rest of the staff was messing with us, even though we thought we were the only ones there. So we run back down the hall. We follow the sound. We went into a set of restrooms where the door opened and slammed. So we figured somebody's messing with us, right? So we go in, and I sort of push the door. My partner says, hey, let's scare whoever it is since they're messing with us. I was like, oh, yeah, that'd be good. And so we sort of sneak our way in the store, or in the bathroom. The door is closed to the stall. And, you don't see anybody in there. So we figured they were hiding. So we got the idea we were just going to go bust the stall door open and scare whoever it was. So we sneak in and we just bust the door open. There was nobody. But honest to goodness, somebody started whispering to us. And then somebody else started whispering to us, and we heard multiple voices. Now, at this point, if this is a setup or a joke, it's pretty elaborate. And I can assure you, I started to get a little bit concerned. We started looking at each other. And we made our way to that door, and the door opened and slammed on us. At this point, we started pushing each other to get out of the room. Literally, we're pushing each other to get out of the room. We start running back down the hall. And I said, stop. This doesn't make sense. Somehow or another, somebody has gone to a lot of trouble to get us. He said, yeah. I said, I got it. I know what we'll do. We'll set the alarm. So what I did was I set an internal alarm to have a motion sensor on. And so we went to our panel and we set it up. And you're still hearing this whole time, somebody's running back and forth with jingling. And you keep hearing it like keys. And I thought, well, it's got to be, somebody's piping that in from somewhere. It's got to be something. So I set the alarm so I could catch whoever it was. And I did. And it started at the bathroom. And then it went to the next room. And then it went to the room beside that. And it went to the room beside that. And then it started coming from the opposite end, from where the door had opened previously. And it went to the room beside that, and the room beside that. And all of a sudden, we started hearing voices, jingling, noises at it, anywhere you could think of. At this point, we're both shaking. We are so nervous. And my buddy pokes me and goes, "Look out there and see who it is." I said, "You look out there." He said, "I'm not looking out there. I'm not moving from this spot ever again." I said, "All right, I'll look." I looked. There was nothing. All of a sudden, the convergence of the motion detectors, seeing everything come up the hall, was right where we were. But there was nobody there. The alarm starts going off, goes berserk. It was crazy. All the noises, everything. We're standing there scared to death, and then it just stops. Silence. We looked at each other, and I said, "Well, I don't know about you. I'm going to pretend like this just never happened." We went back to work. We were both shaking the whole time. About a week after that, I did surveillance for this place too, because we had security issues. I got in one morning and I was reviewing surveillance tape. Back then it was VHS. I'm watching our closer, our staff person close. This is an older building. There's some really old photos hanging on the walls. And every time he walked down the hall, there was a light that was following him. And he clearly knew something was behind him because he kept turning around to see what it was. And when that happened, the light would go into a picture and it would come right back out as soon as he turned around. About 2 hours after he closes, there's a place where we had taken down a wall from the original building. And there is no windows, no way for light infiltration. And I see what comes up out of the floor is a mist. It comes up out of the floor, it fans out, comes into the shape of a body, and then it goes right back in. I screamed. I'm not ashamed to say it. I screamed when I saw it. I called my supervisor. I called the staff. Everybody screamed. We agreed to never show it again because it probably wouldn't be good for business if people saw it. But it was really interesting because there used to be a wall there. And we kept trying to debunk it and think of excuses and what could be. Put it out of my head. 2 weeks after that, I'm back in that original room setting up. I turn around and there's an older gentleman standing there in the hallway looking at me. I keep working. Finally, I turn around and I said, "Sir, can I help you with something?" He doesn't answer me for a long time. And finally, he breaks his silence and he said, I was just looking at the room one more time. And I said, "Oh, you've been here before, have you?" He said, "Yeah." He said, many, many years ago, my wife died in this room. And I just wanted to come back and see it one more time. Well, my partner and I looked at each other and we knew exactly what had happened. Needless to say, from then on, if we heard a little noise, we knew maybe what that was. But I got to tell you, from that day forward, I was much more cautious in that building. And there were many more things that happened, but that one took the cake. And that is the ghost story.
There you go. I believe him. Thank you so much, Kathita. Appreciate that. We appreciate all the help we can get up in this little show of ours. And I hope you're enjoying it. We've got one more ghost story, and then I think we're out of here. Since Steve's still out with Mr. Mulder, I'm going to go ahead and play it. Let's see if I can catch it again. I'm doing good with the buttons tonight. Oh, wait. See, I spoke too soon. Spoke too soon. I already hit a wrong one. Hold on. Hold on. See if I can get it. Let's do the bootlegger house. See how this one turns out.
The Bootlegger House, which is now located on the corner of 7th and Poplar Street, just out of uptown Charlotte, actually used to be located on Caldwell Street. It was originally in an area called Brooklyn, and it was primarily a blue-collar, mostly African-American neighborhood. In the 1970s, the city purchased that land and started tearing down the houses there to make way for the Government Center, which stands there today. And a man by the name of Michael Trent saved the Bootlegger House by buying it for $50. He had it moved through the city, through Tryon Street to where it stands now. Now, the Bootlegger House is said to be haunted by its original owner.
The Bootlegger House is probably the most famous residential haunted location in Charlotte. The current owner has been there a pretty significant time, and he's forthright with the current stories.
We've been here 22 years.
Love the porch.
Bought it in March of 1999, and at the closing table, the owners slid the keys across the table and said, "By the way, there's a mischievous spirit in the house."
Now, during the 1920s, this house actually served as an area for bootleggers to hide their liquor, hence the name, the Bootlegger House. Charlotte, like many other cities at that time, was affected by Prohibition and had their share of people who would make
they don't leave that axe out there, right?
Charlotte, even today, has a series of underground tunnels that once served us during its gold rush, during the mining days, and the bootleggers often used those tunnels to transport their liquor that they made and sold.
Charlotte was a main hub for bootlegging during the Prohibition. That's actually how NASCAR got its start, from people sneaking up their cars out to run the cops and things like that.
There's a door underneath the stairs that's part of the wainscoting, but it's a little secret door. There was a table in front of that, and I guess that's where the inventory was stored. Typically, when we do a renovation or paint, move furniture, it seems to stir the energy up, and things will be more likely to fall down or fall off a counter or go missing. And one morning we came down, and there was a chair balanced on two legs. One time I thought I saw somebody out of the corner of my eye in the den and called for anybody, no answer. And finally I said, "Okay, who are you?" And at that time a pot fell off the pot rack. And then we got locked out of the downstairs bathroom. And the locks are such that you cannot lock them and lock the door.
I love those door knobs.
And we called the locksmith, and he said, "Well, that lock can't be opened with a key." And after that, we were going to break in through the window. And as soon as that came to be, the door was automatically opened.
There have been reports of ghosts that leave water behind them. And in some cases, there seems to be physical water. In other cases, the person seeing the apparition might see water, but then when they go to the spot where they've seen it, it's still dry. Certainly, water is associated with paranormal activity. And in fact, one of the interesting things about the correlation between water and paranormal activity is we know water conducts energy. And so large bodies of water, lakes, oceans, rivers, running water especially, are often said to be sites of heightened paranormal activity.
We woke up one morning and there were wet footprints on the stairway.
Stop it.
I said, "Did you take a shower this morning?"
Stop
No. Okay, well, this is very odd. And then the water would come on at 3 o'clock in the morning, various locations throughout the house, the bathroom sink or the kitchen sink. And I'd have to get up and turn the water off in the middle of the night. Water is a theme, and a lot of things happen with the water here. But there's a spring that runs under 7th Street that pops up in the middle of the street sometimes, and they have to pave back over it.
The current ghost is supposed to be one of the old owners, but I feel like if they didn't have any paranormal activity at the old location and they do now, then it may be more something that has to do with the location in 4th Ward.
Is there anything you'd like to add about the house or any of the experiences you've had?
Pretty thorough little documentary.
Somewhat explainable, but we love living here. We love the house, and I think whatever the energy is or whoever it is happy that we're here.
Although the house is named for liquor, the spirit inside seems more compelled by water. Are the unexplained watery antics those of a paranormal prankster? Or is their ghostly energy part of the land itself, conducted by water from subterranean streams beneath the Bootlegger House? It remains one of the mysteries of supernatural Charlotte. Don't miss new episodes of Nancy Drew, Fridays at 9 on WCCB, Charlotte's CW.
Somebody write that down, Nancy Drew.
Don't miss Nancy Drew, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think that was a cute little, I had to throw that in there. That is from the good folks.
Well-produced little segment there.
Wasn't it? I mean, holy mackerel, the stuff that you can do. So that's me digging stuff, throwing stuff in there. It's like a potpourri of the Revolutionary War. You got a little bit of the die. And again, I want you to remember that die, telling what these people went through to make a loaf of bread. It break your heart. I mean, it's just, I got mass respect for these people. If any one of us had to get up and do what they did in a day just to get through, you wouldn't begrudge these men or anybody a drink of rum or whatever the hell they were drinking back then, their mulled wine and their beer and, you know, all that stuff. So, because look, man, they worked their butts off. I don't care if you were an accountant or you were a landowner, it took you forever to get from place to place. You know, I think it's so fun in this series, Steve. There's that common thread that goes through all 6 episodes. Okay. And of course it's the people and you've got your main characters, but they do such a good job of maybe following a soldier from beginning to end, or a wife maybe, or somebody that was more stable that kept a good journal all the way through. And again, another parallel, we had much of that in the Civil War as well. Still continued, very important. One of these people is this fun little guy, and his dad is a major sheep farmer. And one of the, I can't remember, across the pond. I can't remember. I think it was in Britain. I can't remember. And he literally, his character existed, and he really did this. And he went all through all 13 colonies. His dad had him on some kind of a fact-finding mission, some kind of crap like that. And it took him almost the whole war to finish because he kept getting stuck. And he'd write a letter and he'd tell about it. He'd bitch, you know. And in the first couple that we've already watched, he's already getting a bad taste in his mouth for what's going on in the cities, because he said, people are asking me questions and I just happen to say how I feel and, you know, how much I love the king. And now they're calling me a Tory and they might tar and feather me. And I mean, these are real concerns. And then you zap over to the wife or the group or the Daughters of Liberty or whatever, having what do they call it? A liberty. It's kind of cute. And there's what do they call spelling? Not a spelling bee. A sewing bee.
Yeah.
And they'd all just get together and make shirts for soldiers, or they'd make socks. They'd knit wool socks, and they'd put it together. They put it in these crates and these barrels. That's how they shipped a lot of the stuff in these. Well, depending on where you were, but pretty profound was the wood crates and the wood and the barrels, because even they'd ship even pins in barrels and stuff. It's crazy. That's where you get your whole Cracker Barrel thing from. It's another story that goes along with the story of cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey, right, Steve? Yep. So there you go. The flags in this mess alone deserve an episode. The stories behind it and everything. It's so hard to pick and choose, but I think we're doing a good job, Steve.
Yep.
It's a wonderful summer event, and I think it gives hope, you know, and it gives ideas. Maybe it'll inspire somebody to make some canned jam or some jellies or something, or, you know, maybe go out there and see if you can make your own candles or lard candles, or I think I always loved seeing that as a kid. They've taken the candles and dipping them and making the taper candles in colonial America. Have you ever been to Williamsburg or Jamestown or any of those places, Steve?
Yeah, I've been to the Jamestown, the fort or whatever it is they have there.
Yeah.
And I think I was at Colonial Williamsburg too. I think it's right there at Jamestown. That's been many, many moons ago. But yeah, I've been up
Me
there.
too.
It's interesting to see.
It's been a long time for both for me, you know, and here I am sitting in it. So that's why I thought it'd be a neat idea if I picked a place that was close, you know, at the end of this series, you know what I mean? And go to like the Battle of Fort Monmouth. Maybe go to the old tenant church, maybe see if the bloodstained pews are still there. See if if you could still go up to the tombstone where the soldier was sitting, and says a cannonball. Some stories say took his leg off, some say took his head off, some say went right through him, and the soldier that was talking to him could see through him for the moment in time, and he just sat, and then before he fell off. So that's the one I was told when I was a kid. My mom told it. She told it so well, it stuck in my head. You'd be hard pressed to knock me off that story. You know, you have those too, Steve. You know, it's like I heard it like this, and I'm kind of, until you show
partial to that first telling that just scared the pants off of you as a kid.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, that young man's story he was telling, I believe every word of it. And, you know, some of these people that I get the feeling he was kind of like a security or maybe a National Guard for the park, or he was trying to keep it down on the DL like that, you know. You know, secrets they keep at national parks, Mr. Stockton.
And other places. I've got a friend that works at Vanderbilt Estate, and he's got all kinds of stories he can tell me, but he's like head of security or something. He's like, I don't want to lose my job. But
yep,
there's stories I can
That's
tell
the feeling I got from him. I believed every word he said.
Yeah.
I really did. And I believed he was scared. And he said, I screamed. I'm telling you, and the way the mist come out of the floor, formed a body, and then back in, some of these National Guard, well, not National Guard, but what's the name of them? I want to say park rangers, and then you've got the national park rangers, but they're called something else, aren't they?
Yeah, you've got the park rangers, and you got the Forestry Service, and you've got the National Park Service. I think I already
there
said
you go.
But
there's one that won't admit ghosts exist. That's the one that now there's two. It's so funny, and then I'll shut up and we'll sign off. But it's so funny to go to Gettysburg because you've got those two factions moving at the same time, and one will show you around and point out things and has a uniform and and is real jovial and friendly, and absolutely believes in ghosts and everything else. But you can't take equipment on the actual battlefield, federal park. Okay, they won't let you have it. So what do they constitute? I don't know. Camera, I don't know. Maybe they don't want you walking around with an Ovilus. I have no clue how deep that goes, whether they get mad for taking videos with your phone or what. I don't know. But then there's the other faction that'll tell you there are no ghosts in Gettysburg. And they'll stand right up there like Mr. Salty on a bag of pretzels, man. And they'll tell you there is no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing here. There's lots of history, and we're glad to show you, but there's no such thing as ghosts. And they'll come out and do videos about it, like cracking on people that believe in the ghosts and that send the stone back that said, I got this stone, and on the way home, I got a flat tire. And I got home, my house burnt down. You know this story, Steve? And they'll send them to
like on the Brady Bunch when they found the little tiki idol in the cave, and it caused all kinds of chaos.
I remember that. That was, and they had brought out some creepy music on that one. I still remember how that music scared me when they showed that. That was on their big Hawaiian vacation week or some kind of crap, wasn't it?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was a big deal. They all had Hawaiian shirts and oh God. I can't believe we used to watch that crap. But then again, I watched American Bandstand and stuff too. So creepy. Remember Chiller? The hand?
Yeah. Chiller Theater.
Yeah, oh gosh. That hand coming out of the quicksand. For the love of God, the quicksand.
We talked
my God,
about
it's hard.
On my radio show this week.
Tell them about your radio show, Steve.
Yeah, it's on Clyde Lewis Ground Zero Radio Network. It's called Everything Out There. Broadcast Sunday nights from 9 to 11 Eastern. And after 2 or 3 weeks or so, then it goes out to all your podcatchers and Spreakers and iHeartRadio and Buzzsprout and all those places. But check it out. I just finished my 41st episode.
41st. How about that? And what are we putting black salt in our pockets for to keep? What are we keeping off of us, Steve? Do you know?
Spirits that follow you home from haunted locations.
Oh, there you go. All right. All right.
When I was trying to keep up with the chat, that was what was being talked about there shortly.
There you go. There you go. Because you never know what you're going to learn here. You know how to check for your mirror. If it's a two-way or if it's not a two-way. Well, there's a way
in Mexico that
it's like a portal.
There's a portal in that mirror.
Because,
and that was also the bedroom that had just all kinds of activity in it. Saw somebody turn the corner down the hallway and go into that bedroom. Nobody was back there.
I feel bad for, it's gotten so, sometimes I'll have guests on and they'll say something that I 100% am directly opposite of what they're saying. But you have to understand, when Steve and I have a guest, we were raised in a time when you had to get, I've never laughed so hard in all my life when I start thinking about my aunt and uncle and having guests over. There was a thing. You had guest towels. You had guest special coffee cakes and shit like that, cheesecakes. You had Sanka coffee. You had the percolator, the electric percolator brewing on the dining room table. Depending on the guest, the good china might have come out of the china cabinet. You might have had some matching plates to go with your teacups, your coffee cups and stuff. You didn't drink out of mismatched mugs. This shit matched, and all this stuff would come out. But Steve and I were rolling because I said one night, I wasn't used to all this because when My dad died, then my mom died, and then I went to live with my aunt and uncle. So that was a whole different world. This was Italian, East Coast, Jersey, upper middle class, full on Italian, full tilt boogie. Okay, so think not Sopranos, but Sopranos parents. Okay, so
the
this
kind
is
of people that enjoyed going to the supper club on special nights.
yeah, and had their own business downtown Asbury Park. They was getting it on, you know. So I'm coming into this world and I'm like, ooh, Entenmann's, you know, this is good, you know. Because keep in mind, I was the kid that used to hang out after my mom would have a card party. I was glad to get a handful of that bridge mix, you know, and maybe you know, or something like that, you know, maybe a piece of chocolate or two. But this was a whole different situation. I figured it was going to be out on the table and all that. 9 o'clock, my aunt would get up from the table, start collecting dishes, start collecting the coffee cups. Yes, Ruth, that's fine. I think you should. I think that would look absolutely gorgeous with the new, and the new Buick. Yeah. And they're taking the stuff away. There goes the second. There goes the fucking coffee pot thing, gets yanked out of the fucking wall. There goes it's in the kitchen. And these people aren't moving. And I'm sitting in the dining kitchen. I'm in the living room watching this. And my uncle, not saying a word. Still got his pocket protector from the ballpoint pens and that extra pair of reading glasses with the chain in his pocket. This man's tired, wants to go to bed. He just slowly goes around the house shutting off lights. And I'm just laughing, and I'm trying, like, I hope they don't see me because I got to see how this ends, you know. And then my aunt disappeared for a minute. Nobody's saying a word, but you know, these other two people are just rattling on worse than I could ever on my best day. They're just, you know, the Cadillac and you know, fine Corinthian leather, and you're hearing shit like this. And meanwhile, my aunt disappears around the corner. What do you think she come down the hallway with? Here come the coats. Just hand me your coat. Guess help and put it on, and they're talking all the way down the sidewalk to their car. It's funniest shit I ever saw in my life. So when people say company's over, you know, company's coming over, and then company's over, that's what I see. There's a whole different world in it, Steve. But you were polite the entire time. You didn't disagree. You didn't have fights. You said, well, I don't know about that, Marge, but okay. You know, how about them Yankees? You had that kind of thing. So when we have guests, we do the same thing. So if they come on here and say something that might be directly opposite of anything you ever heard come out of my mouth, and I don't say anything, that's what I'm doing, because you're polite, and they have every right to feel that way, every right to believe what they're going to believe, and I don't make my guests feel unwelcome until it's time to go, and then the lights start getting shut off. Did I say that right, Steve?
Yeah.
It was pretty good. Was I on the money? All right, baby. All right. I love you too. I love you too much. My love to Nick and little man. And listen, guys, we've just barely scratched the surface in the Revolutionary War. This is so interesting. I'm going to try to bring in all these wild and crazy, quirky things. If there's a haunting there, we're going to talk about it. We got Molly Pitcher coming. We've got, listen, there must be 25, 30 Molly Pitchers that I can bring up. Women that went there and just had enough and took over a cannon and started shooting. The stories are endless, you know, but the bravery was also in the streets. Remember little Christopher, who was just wanted to be a part of something, from a German family who understood the things that he was reading, were teaching other kids to, you know, back and forth to read, and understood that he wanted freedom. He wanted his rights. He believed in something to stand up for, to not let people just walk over him, all over him. And he was an unfortunate kid in a very tumultuous time. So it wasn't just the times to try men's souls. These kids suffered too. They joined in. They were drummer boys. They were, you know, if you're on the ships, you're powder monkeys at the age of what, Vixen? 5, 6, you know, these kids. So this war touches everybody. It's nothing to dive into. It's nothing to take for granted. And certainly your freedom and your rights are not to be taken for granted too. Like Benjamin Franklin said, if you're willing to give up that security and your liberties, you don't deserve either one. I paraphrase, but you know the thing. So I love you. Long may she wave. Be safe out there. No fear. Take care of yourselves, and maybe make some pepper cake or dip some candles or take up blacksmithing. Right, Steve? We're listening to Steve's radio show.
On the side of the road, cook it up and see how it tastes.
See how it tastes. Make your own flour. You know, get her done. Figure it out. Get a sheep, shear it, make your own wool, then dye it. It can be done. They've done it before. I love you so
Spin
much.
Your own butter.
Listen, guys, be safe out there. I think it's getting crazy. And let me pull up a little music here, and we'll go on our way out. Let's see.
Thanks, everybody. Good night, Cisco.
I love you, sweetheart. Good night.
you.
Good night, Nick. Good night, little man.
They're waving good night.
Good night, everybody. Good night, baby. Good night.
See you next week, everybody.
Here we go. Good night, sweetheart. Absolutely love that logo, guys. I think it's badass. I love it. I made it by accident, too. It's cool. I love it. Good night, everybody. Lexington and Concord. Man, it all stood right there. It started right there.
Lexington and Concord.
Look at that. Good night. Gatekeepers, be good humans. Watch out for the crap in the fog, apparently.
Drummer boys were responsible for beating out vital battle orders and communication signals. They faced danger from the beginning of the fight to its conclusion. After battles, they helped police the field, carrying wounded men to the hospital tents and burying the fallen. Drummers played duty calls and signals during combat, ensuring soldiers knew what to do. Their drum beats ordered maneuvers, even when officers' voices were drowned out by musket fire. Courage was essential, as drummers were always exposed to enemy bullets. The youngest drummer boy in the American Revolutionary War was Nathan Futrell, who joined the North Carolina Continental Militia at the tender age of 7. During the war, roughly 5,000 African American soldiers and sailors, both free and enslaved, served the Revolutionary War. Some young boys escaped and fought at the side of grown men. Mount Hope Cemetery in Rochester, New York, the burial place of Alexander Milliner, who served in the Continental Army as drummer boy attached to George Washington's Life Guard. He died at the age of 103 in 1865 as the American Civil War was drawing to a close. During the American Revolution, he was present at the battles of White Plains, Brandywine, Saratoga, Monmouth, and Yorktown. At Monmouth, New Jersey, he received a flesh wound in his thigh and almost died from the loss of blood. The great elm gum tree in Concord, Massachusetts, has a fascinating history, and some believe it to be haunted. The ghostly drummer boy. During the Revolutionary War, the great elm gum tree stood witness to significant events.
One night, as the Battle of Lexington and Concord raged nearby, a young drummer boy sought refuge under its branches. Exhausted and terrified, he beat his drum to signal the Minutemen. Legend has it that his ghost still roams the area, drumming an urgent rhythm. Some say they've heard faint drumming sounds near the tree, especially during foggy nights. Colonel Howe of the King's troops met the rosy, sweet-natured daughter of Farmer Jarrett near Valley Forge. He fell seriously in love. Her family disapproved of the officer. So the young officer met the girl in secret, and they plighted troth beneath the garden elm trees, hidden in the gray mist. As Hal bent to take his first kiss that night, a rising wind went past, bringing from afar the roll of a drum. And as they talked, the drum kept drawing nearer until it seemed at hand. The officer peered across the wall and then hurried to his mistress's side, as pale as death. The fields outside were empty of life. Louder came the rattling drum. It seemed to enter the gate, pass but a yard away, go through the wall, and die in the distance. They were scared and shaking, and he ushered the girl home. Later, among the trials of war, he would marry the girl, and the wedding took place in the spacious best room of her father's home. But as he slipped the ring on her finger of his bride, the roll of a drum was heard advancing up the steps into the room, then on and away until it was still again. The young colonel was pale. Ruth clung to him in terror. Clergymen and guests looked at each other in amazement. No drummer of any kind was seen. Had the ghost of the drummer boy approved of the union? These young musicians contributed significantly to the war effort, their beats echoing through history. On both sides.